These writes that he received this surname from Dionysi, which means accomplish, particularly of a journey, because in daily circuit from east to west, bringing forth night and day, it accomplishes the circuit of the heavens. The physicists call Dionysus the spirit of Zeus, because the sun is the spirit of the cosmos, but the cosmos is named heaven, which they call Jupiter. These remarks of Macrobius are a part of his comprehensive demonstration that not only Saturn and the corresponding Chronos of the Greeks signify the sun, but that the Roman Janus and likewise Liber and Dionysus, Apollo, Asclepius, and Zeus are actually sun gods, and all are connected with one another. That's on page 200. He further explains on page 201, he's reading another inscription. Hear thou who turnest forever the radiant sphere of distant motion that runs round the celestial vortices. Well, this is an invocation of the celestial force which moves the outermost sphere encompassing all the other spheres of heaven. This celestial force, as the following verses cited by Macrobius indicate, is designated by the names of Zeus, Dionysus, and Helios. It follows from the text that this is not the sun of scientific Greek astronomy, which is one of the 7 planets occupying the central position in this series, Moon, Mercury, Venus, then the central position of the sun, and then you have Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, for the text speaks of the distant motion, which embraces all of the other heavenly spheres. This distant sphere, which encompasses the actual heavens with the planets and with their orbits, is here called the sphere of Helios, and at the same time of Zeus Dionysus, who created and engendered all things out of himself. That's page 202. Notice this. This is identified by Liesgang as a celestial force that encompasses all the spheres and influences them. When we read Facsimile 2, figure 5, Joseph Smith said, it is called an Egyptian, Inishgo Andash. This is one of the governing planets also. It is said by the Egyptians to be the sun and to borrow its light from Kolob through the medium of Ke-Ivanrash, which is the grand key, or in other words, the governing power. And he says this governs other planets, fixed planets, and stars. There's an idea of a governing power, a measurement through the heavens, identified by Joseph Smith as figure 5, which is remarkably the cow, the sacred cow, the Hathor cow. So we're hearing again some very interesting connections, echoes of some ancient views of the cosmos that is not the scientific Greek cosmos, but goes back to earlier times. Through Hans Liesgang's very interesting comments, and we see the same principle touched on by Joseph Smith, but this idea of powers and influence and governing through the distance of space and time, Kolob being a governing force with which other stars borrow their light, etc. Very, very worthwhile to notice here. Another aspect that I believe people are beginning to catch on to, and that Hugh Nibley elaborated on for decades, and which, of course, the LDS Egyptologist John Gee and the LDS Egyptologist Michael Dennis Rhodes and others, including myself, have begun to show that the ancient Egyptians were truly involved in a cosmological perspective. It was all cosmology. Now, from the Hebrew side, from the ancient Hebrews, which of course there was interaction with the various other cultures, Canaan, Syria, Mesopotamia, Babylonia, and especially Egypt, and the influence has become much more pronounced than we have understood, say, in the last 100 years. But the cosmology, the tie-in with the cosmology, has been very powerfully shown by both Leonore Leet in her extensive analysis of the doctrine of what she calls the ancient Hebraic doctrine of the divine Son through the Kabbalah and the Old Testament priesthoods, as well as Margaret Barker's materials, which I will analyze extensively in relation, believe it or not, in relation with our Facsimile 2 Figure 7. This principle of cosmology has become very prominent. The Egyptologists, mainly in the 1930s and 40s, began to pick up on this, I believe largely because of G.A. Wainwright. His article, Some Celestial Associations of Men, in the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology, Volume 21 for 1935, has so much material which I wish to share with you, and I'm going to basically share his ideas and then talk off the top of my head and show connections with many other various aspects and facets and other Egyptological information. Raymond Faulkner's The Bremer Rind Papyrus, a very important series of studies in the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology in the same year, 1935, discussing the songs of Isis and Nephthys and how they are pulling together the cosmological angles as well. Wainwright says Min was far from being the mere fertility god which we have thought of him. He was also a sky god. And this is so important because this brings in the heavens. And if anything Joseph Smith himself ever did, it was to bring back into theology this principle of the importance of the cosmos. Doctrine and Covenants, section 88, is magnificent on this. Section 93, the commentaries in the Pearl of Great Price itself is just enormous. So this cosmology, this universality, has begun to get some power behind it. Interestingly, he says one of the symbols of men are his feathers, the streamer, his raised arm, and perhaps his whip-like implement, his sacred bowl, his identification with one sky god, Horus, and his identity with another sky god, Ammon, and his participation in the Kamut F object, which, according to Wainwright, is the meteorite. He is later, Min is also associated with the Syrian god Resheph, who is a lightning god. This doesn't do away with the fact that Min is a fertility god. Now, point blank, what is the best way to symbolize the principle of fertility with a male? That would be the ipophallic posture that our figure 7 has. From one perspective, you could say, yes, this is religious pornography. From another perspective, it is a symbol going beyond the symbol to illustrate a principle. We are living in a living universe. We humans are the ones who have categorized the organic and the inorganic, etc. Brigham Young, I'll look up this reference for you. Brigham Young, I believe it was in the Journal of Discourses. He said flat out, all things have intelligence in them. The rocks, the trees, water, air, the earth. Well, the earth itself is depicted as living in our book of Enoch, in the book of Moses, in our Pearl of Great Price. We live in the living universe. The idea of fertility, fecundity, growth, life. It's not a dead place we're at. We are so used to our earthly perspective that we lose the reality of the living, breathing cosmos. And this does begin to get mystical in many respects, certainly. Well, the most mystical section of all